Carnival Row can be best categorized as a detective drama set in steampunk Victorian fantasy. Orlando Bloom plays the good guy, living in a sect of humanity that heavily discriminates the magical creatures that live amongst them. Fairies, trolls, and many others fight for equality, while the real monsters rise in the shadows, growing in strength while political tomfoolery occurs. It's a magical world and a relatable political tale with many wonders, but not without some flaws. So let's discuss why.
Moments like this are the moments that change everything. If you're not careful, they'll pass you by.
The show has two main stories. First, we have the story of Vignette and Philo, a man who comes from a military background where his moral compass has seemingly always pointed north. His past is shrouded in mystery that I wouldn't dare spoil because it's one of the few good twists of the show that I genuinely didn't see coming. Well, to an extent. He meets a fae, which is a nickname for a fairy, and her name is Vignette. They fall in love during a great war, which is kind of like the World War I of the time. And it was a long war between humans that despised mythical creatures and everyone else. The main storyline takes up 7 years after this time, in a city filled with these refugees from the war and the humans who live there. Their local government prevents hate crimes against them or discrimination against them, but it doesn't mean that the humans who live there are exactly thrilled at their presence. That's the setting. The main drama is about a creepy murder mystery and the love story between Philo and Vignette. Orlando Bloom does a great job, and Kara is my second favorite character, the first being this gentleman of the second main storyline that's going on. He pretty much exists just to make people eat shit for believing he or any non-human character couldn't be wealthy. I break the show into these two main stories because, well, they have very little to do with each other. I believe this second plot was developed solely to show the discrimination occurring at all levels of this society. It's not just a low-income issue. All the way to high society humans, they've been groomed this way. One thing that I'll give this show great credit for is how they introduce characters. Cara Delevingne's character starts off in one of the most badass sequences that I thought that they could create. I mean, she starts off by saving another fae as they flee from their homeland. She rescues them and gets a bunch of them to a ship where they can pay for passage to the new world, to the place in which the refugees all accumulate and Carnival Row is created. It's nice. She's clearly the hero in the moments, but she makes a slight remark about them still having to pay off their debt when they get there. And then you realize that she's taking money to get people into indentured servitude. Then you hit this ethical bridge where you go, is indentured servitude in this instance wrong? The alternative for these people is death. So surely they wouldn't mind working for 2 years as a maid to pay off their debts if it means that they can live and see their family again. But then you see how the maids get treated in this world. And yeah, I mean, it's good. It's complex storytelling that there's no real right or wrong answer. It gives her character a much needed depth as she subtly struggles with the concept of her actions and the people around her as they learn what she was.
I was just remembering something you taught me.
Oh?
That sins of omission are far more dangerous than sins of commission.
Because they're easier to get away with.
The show is extremely political. It tries to display very real issues like racism, slavery, societal structures, and government in 8-hour-long episodes. But I didn't find it jarring. It's only in retrospect that I could see why some people were put off by the apparent need of the showrunners to create a statement with this show. And I get both sides. Again, it wasn't jarring for me. These are very real issues that need to be discussed, and in discussing them openly, we ensure younger generations have less things to worry about over time. I picked up on what the showrunners were trying to do early on. I mean, it's everywhere. But again, it did not ruin my immersion. It felt genuine. It felt like a story that we grew up with, and fairies have been fighting for equality in our society. The humans of the city they live in fight between each other about how these mythical creatures should be treated, and that all comes to a point at the very end of the show beautifully. Politics aside, this is a detective murder mystery, or it tries very hard to be, and something I do dock the show for is how little I cared about the detective aspect of this. I liked the moments where Philo felt like Sherlock Sherlock Holmes beating up the bad guys with ease or figuring out what only Sherlock Holmes could have figured out, but it was few and far between. The person doing all of the killing is shown early on as the bad guy, and it ruins that twist. Since this is a detective mystery, us knowing the whodunit has adverse side effects. Mainly, it wasn't surprising, when it should have been. The main character doesn't figure it out for 4 or 5 more episodes after we know who the villain is, which depreciates his character's wit in some ways. Which brings me to my next point. My biggest issue with the story and the first season of this brand new show is how bad the pacing is. I forced myself to watch after episode 3 and 4. I completely lost interest, to be completely honest. The beginning was great. It focused heavily on the world building, which had a lot to offer us, but the middle just felt soulless, if that's even possible. I don't know. I mean, the final episode was the big reveal, but it was as if they saved every single thing until the end and then just dumped it on you. Some twists just felt pointless and could have been left out entirely to the same effect. I'm glad that I watched the show. I mean, I enjoyed it, and I look forward to season 2. I just hope that they do a better job with pacing and making those big twists more impactful to the story and the motivation of the main character.
Am I interrupting?
Overall, it is a decent show with much to offer in a world that has much more to offer. It feels like it wants to be the next Game of Thrones, right? But it falls short in some key areas. It has a very Lovecraftian vibe throughout and adds a lot of unique fantasy elements together that I wanted to see more of. If the middle of the season was better and the 2 storylines connected more, I would be ranting and raving about this show. I hope that you watch it simply so that I have more people to discuss it with, and so that it gets a second season. But if you're not really feeling what the marketing and trailer videos have put out, which I encourage you to go watch, then you can probably sit this one out. If you enjoyed this, please be sure to subscribe for more in the future. Thank you so much to all my wonderful patrons, including this month's highest tier donators, Chris Cole, Robert Holtz, and Michael Link. Much love, everybody, and I can't wait to talk to you all again soon.